I'm Michael, 36 years old, and my own parents tried to legally steal my house while I was still living in it. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on them in a way they never saw coming, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It all started on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are a storm at my law firm, a relentless deluge of depositions, client meetings, and the endless, crushing weight of billable hours. I was neck-deep in a complex contract dispute, my mind navigating the treacherous waters of liability clauses, when my personal phone buzzed on the desk, a vibration I usually ignored. But this time, something made me look. It was a text from my oldest son, Jason. He's 14, at that age where a text from his dad is a social liability unless it's about a ride or money. A one-word text from him could only mean one thing. The text read, "Call." Instantly, the legal jargon in my head evaporated, replaced by a surge of cold adrenaline. A call from Jason during school hours meant trouble. Big trouble. I mumbled an apology to my colleagues, claiming I needed a moment, and stepped out of the conference room, my polished leather shoes silent on the plush carpet. The hallway was quiet, the air conditioned and still, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. "Jason? What is it? Are you okay? Is Daniel hurt?" His voice came through the phone, thin and tight, a desperate whisper. "Dad, it's Grandma and Grandpa. They're moving our stuff out of our rooms right now." I stopped dead in the middle of the hallway. I couldn't process the words. "What do you mean, moving your stuff?" "They're taking it all to the basement." The whisper broke with panic. "They said Nathan needs our rooms. They said the basement is fine for us now." The basement. A wave of ice and fire washed over me. The damp, musty basement with its exposed pipes and concrete floor. The one I had explicitly, repeatedly, told everyone was off-limits for anything but holiday decoration storage. The basement that had taken on 6 inches of water during a storm 2 years ago, ruining a mountain of things we'd foolishly stored down there. My parents, Eleanor and Harold, had been living under my roof for 2 years. My younger brother, Robert, and his 8-year-old son, Nathan, for the last 6 months. I had opened my home to them, the home I had built with my late wife, Sarah. And this was the thanks I got. "Let me talk to your grandmother, Jason," I said, my voice dangerously level. A moment of muffled sound, then Eleanor's voice, bright and cheerful. "Michael, honey, everything all right at work?" "No, Mom. Everything is not all right. What, exactly, are you doing to my son's rooms?" The cheerfulness vanished, replaced by a familiar, steely resolve. "Oh, that. We simply decided it was time for a change. Nathan needs a proper space to thrive, poor thing. He's been through so much. Honestly, Michael, 2 teenage boys don't need 2 of the best bedrooms in the house. The basement is more than suitable for them." I felt the blood drain from my face, the sheer, breathtaking audacity of it. "There is nothing to discuss, Mom. Put their things back." "It's already done," she said, her voice dripping with the sweet poison of absolute certainty. "This is what's best for the family." "Mom," I said, my voice dropping to a low, measured tone, the one I used in court just before dismantling a hostile witness. "I will be home in exactly 45 minutes. I expect to find every single photograph, every book, every piece of clothing, back in its proper place. Am I making myself clear?" I hung up before she could utter another word. My hands weren't shaking. My face was a mask of professional calm as I walked back to my office. My assistant, Linda, a woman who could read my moods better than anyone, looked up, her expression alarmed. "Michael, you look like you've seen a ghost." I looked at her, but my mind was already unshelving a plan, a dark contingency I had prayed to God I would never have to use. "Linda," I said, my voice as clear and cold as a winter morning, "cancel the rest of my day, and get Jessica Thorne on the line for me. Tell her Situation X has just been activated." Before I tell you about that 45-minute drive home, a drive where every red light felt like a personal insult, I need you to understand about the house. You have to understand the promise I made. Otherwise, what I did next might seem extreme. To me, it was the only option I had left. This house, This collection of wood, brick, and glass on a quiet suburban street was the last living piece of my wife. It was my promise to Sarah solidified. Sarah was stolen from me, from our boys 5 years ago. Cancer is a word that still tastes like ash in my mouth. It was a slow, brutal siege. In those final months, our world shrank to the confines of our sun-filled bedroom. One afternoon, when the morphine was giving her a moment of clarity, she grabbed my hand. Her grip was surprisingly firm, a final spark of her fierce spirit. Her eyes, the same vibrant green as our son Daniel's, locked on mine. "Promise me, Michael," she'd whispered, her voice a fragile thread of sound. "Promise me you'll keep this house for the boys. No matter what, this is their anchor. This is where we'll always be a family. This is home." Tears streamed down my face, but I met her gaze. "I promise, Sarah. Always." It was more than a promise. It was a sacred oath. We'd bought this place using the inheritance my grandmother had left me. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough for a down payment, enough to give us a start. We didn't just move in, we breathed life into these walls. I can still smell the paint fumes from the weekend we did Jason's nursery. Sarah, with a charming smudge of sky blue paint on her cheek, had insisted on a galaxy mural. We lay on our backs for hours, our necks aching, our hands unsteady, dabbing glow-in-the-dark paint onto the ceiling, creating clumsy constellations. "He's going to lie here and dream of adventures," she'd said, her smile so bright it made the bare bulb hanging from the ceiling seem dim. "This house will be full of adventures, Michael." And it was. We hosted backyard barbecues that were legendary for my burnt burgers and her perfect potato salad. We planted a small vegetable garden that mostly yielded sad-looking tomatoes but made us feel like pioneers. We marked the boys' heights on the kitchen doorframe, a testament to time passing too quickly. Every corner held a memory, a ghost of laughter. The worn patch on the arm of the living room chair was where she'd sat, curled up with a book. The faint chip on the coffee table was from the time a toddler-aged Daniel had used it as a drum. This house wasn't an asset. It was an archive of our love story. After she was gone, it became my fortress. The silence was a physical presence, but if I listened hard enough, I could still hear her. Raising 2 grieving sons alone while trying to climb the ladder at a demanding law firm was a marathon of exhaustion and heartache. I poured every ounce of myself into creating stability for them. Our therapist, Dr. Thompson, a kind man with a gentle voice and wise eyes, told me that routine and a secure environment were paramount for their healing. This house was that secure environment. It was the one constant in their upended world. Then, 2 years ago, my family began their slow, creeping invasion. Started with a phone call from my mother, Eleanor. She was a virtuoso of emotional manipulation, and this was her masterpiece. She wept about bad investments, about the risk of losing their home. "Michael, we have nowhere else to go," she'd sobbed. "Just for a little while. Just until your father and I can get back on our feet." My father, Harold, was on the extension, making solemn, agreeable noises. How could I say no? They were my parents. I was their successful lawyer son. It was my duty. I cleared out my home office, moving it into the cramped spare room, and gave them the master guest suite. First, it was almost nice. My mother cooked, my father helped with yard work. It felt, for a fleeting moment, like the big, bustling family Sarah had always dreamed of. But the little things started almost immediately. Subtle digs, wrapped in smiles. "You were so fortunate your grandmother's inheritance went to you, Michael," my mother would say, patting my arm. "Robert never had that kind of advantage." Or my father, looking at my monthly mortgage statement I'd accidentally left on the counter. "It's a heavy burden, son. A big house like this. It's a good thing we're here to help you carry the load." They weren't helping carry the load. They were adding to it. They were subtly reframing my home as a shared family asset that I was merely the caretaker of. 6 months ago, the second wave of the invasion arrived. My younger brother, Robert, and his son, Nathan. Robert, the perpetual golden child, had been laid off. He was a single dad, and my mother's campaign on his behalf was a thing of strategic genius. He's your brother, Michael. He's family. And poor, sensitive Nathan, he needs to be around his cousins. It's for the good of the boys. So I yielded again. I gave Robert the other large guest room. And just like that, my peaceful sanctuary became a crowded, noisy, 5-bedroom house where I was beginning to feel like a guest. The shift in dynamics was immediate and nauseating. Nathan was treated like a visiting prince. Robert could do no wrong. If Daniel had a friend over to play, my mother would suggest they keep the noise down because Nathan is trying to nap. If Jason was excited about making the school soccer team, my father would change the subject to how Robert was so close to landing a huge new job. I saw the light in my own son's eyes begin to dim. They started spending more time in their rooms, their doors closed. They were retreating, ceding territory in their own home. I tried to address it. I sat my parents down one evening. Mom, Dad, I began trying to keep my tone even. I need us to be a team, and that means being fair to Jason and Daniel. This is their home first and foremost. Eleanor's face went rigid. Michael, I am shocked you would accuse us of playing favorites. That is a terrible thing to say. We love all the children. You're just stressed from your job. It was classic gaslighting. My concerns weren't valid. They were a symptom of my own failings. The conversation was a dead end. It was my best friend, Jessica Thorne, who first put a name to my unease. We were having lunch and I was venting. They're not just living with you, Michael, she'd said, her lawyer brain dissecting the situation. They're executing a soft takeover. You need to protect yourself. Your name is the only one on that deed, but they are creating a narrative of dependency and entitlement. It's a classic setup. She insisted on pulling a certified copy of my deed and my grandmother's will and keeping them in her office safe. Call it an insurance policy, she'd said. I felt foolish, but I agreed. Dr. Thompson confirmed my fears. The boys feel like their territory is being violated, Michael. He told me during one of my check-in sessions. They see their grandparents and their uncle acting with an authority that should be yours alone. It's creating deep insecurity. They're questioning their place in their own home. That was the turning point. Hearing it from him, the man who had guided us through our darkest days, made it real. I had, in my desire to be a good son and brother, failed in my primary duty, to be a good father. That night I called Jessica. You were right, I said, my voice grim. I need a plan, a worst-case scenario, something legally ironclad. We spent hours on the phone, mapping it out, a step-by-step strategy, a legal firewall. We gave it a code name, something that sounded like it was out of a spy movie to lighten the mood, but the intent was deadly serious. We'll call it Situation X, she'd said, and you only press the button if they cross a line so egregious, there's no coming back. As I drove, the city lights blurring past my window, I knew that line had been crossed. They hadn't just moved furniture. They had violated a sanctuary. They had desecrated a promise made to a dying woman. They had declared war on my children's sense of security. And I was about to deploy a weapon of legal and emotional destruction they couldn't possibly imagine. They thought I was just Michael, the quiet, grieving son. They were about to find out I was also a lawyer, a father, and a man who had absolutely nothing left to lose. I didn't pull into the driveway. I parked on the street, a deliberate tactical decision. This wasn't a homecoming. It was an intervention. I sat in the car for a long moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel, and just looked at the house. The cheerful blue door Sarah and I had painted one sunny Saturday. The big oak tree in the front yard where we'd hung a tire swing. It all looked so normal, so peaceful. But inside, I knew, was a toxic, festering wound. I grabbed my briefcase, my shield and my weapon, and walked up the path. The front door swung open before I could reach for the handle, as if I'd been eagerly awaited. My mother, Eleanor, stood framed in the doorway, a serene, triumphant smile on her lips. It was the condescending smile of a victor, and it made my blood run cold. "Michael, wonderful you're home," she chirped, her tone suggesting I was a welcome guest. "We've been so productive. The house has a much better flow now. Nathan is just over the moon with his new room. My father, Harold hovered behind her, a ghost at the feast. He had the grace to look ashamed, his eyes darting from my face to a point somewhere over my shoulder. "Now, son," he mumbled, his voice placating. "We discussed it, and Nathan's been having a very hard time since Robert. Well, since the job loss. A boy needs a proper space to feel secure and do his homework. My brother, Robert, the reason for all this was a study in passive aggression." He leaned against the archway to the living room, scrolling through his phone, pointedly ignoring the entire scene. He wasn't pulling the trigger, but he was providing the ammunition. I didn't grant any of them a glance. My focus was singular. My eyes scanned the entryway, past them, searching. And then I saw them. My boys. Jason and Daniel were huddled together on the bottom step of the main staircase. They looked small and lost. Daniel, my sweet, artistic 12-year-old, had his face buried in his knees, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Jason, my 14-year-old who was trying so hard to be a man, was just staring blankly at the floor, his jaw tight with helpless rage. Their school backpacks were discarded at their feet. They looked like evacuees. That image, the sight of my children, broken and defeated in the one place on earth they were supposed to feel unconditionally safe, shattered the last of my composure. The cold, controlled anger I'd been nursing now had a core of white-hot plasma. I strode past my parents without a word. The sound of my hard-soled shoes on the hardwood floor was like a judge's gavel. I stopped directly in front of my sons and crouched down, bringing myself to their level, creating a barrier between them and the others. "Hey!" I said, my voice impossibly soft. "Look at me." Daniel looked up, his face blotchy and stained with tears. Jason's eyes met mine, and what I saw in them, a cocktail of betrayal, anger, and confusion, steeled my resolve. "Dad, they just threw our stuff in the garage." Jason's voice was raspy. "My signed baseball. The one from the All-Star game you took me to. It's in a cardboard box with a bunch of old, leaky paint cans." Daniel finally spoke, his voice muffled. "And my sketchbook, the one Mom Sarah gave me, it's gone. Grandma said it was just clutter." I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second. Clutter, my wife's last gift to her son. I reached out and put a hand on each of their shoulders, squeezing gently. "I know, and I'm going to fix it. I am so sorry I let it get this far." I stood up slowly and turned to face the three adults, who were watching this tender moment with expressions ranging from impatience to annoyance. "Where?" I said, my voice quiet but carrying the weight of a death sentence. "Are my son's things?" Eleanor waved a dismissive hand. "For heaven's sake, Michael, we told you. Most of it is in the basement. Some of the junk we moved to the garage to make space." "Junk," I repeated, tasting the word. "You mean my son's collection of first-edition science fiction novels he's been saving for since he was 10? Or my other son's professional art supplies that were the last birthday gift his mother ever gave him? That's the junk you're referring to?" Harold shuffled his feet. "Now, Michael, you're getting hysterical. They're just material possessions." "They are not just material possessions." My voice cracked like a whip through the tense silence. "They are the symbols of their childhood, of their security. They are their belongings in their rooms in my house." I took a purposeful step towards them, and I saw my mother flinch. It was the first time in my adult life I had ever seen her flinch. She was used to me absorbing her blows, not returning them. I turned back to my sons, my voice softening again. "Go upstairs. Pack an overnight bag. Just the essentials. Toothbrush, a change of clothes for school tomorrow, your phone chargers." Jason's head snapped up. "Pack? Why? Where are we going?" Eleanor let out a sharp, derisive laugh. "Oh, honestly, Michael, stop the theatrics. You're not going anywhere. We," I said, locking eyes with my mother, "are going to a hotel, because it has become abundantly clear that my children are no longer considered residents in their own rooms. So, we will find a place where they are treated with the dignity they deserve." The dam of civility broke. "A hotel? Have you lost your mind?" Eleanor's voice climbed into a shrill register. You're going to throw away good money on a hotel room when you have this perfectly good house? It was a perfectly good house. I shot back, my voice laced with ice. Before you staged a coup and decided my sons were disposable. We did it for Nathan. Harold bleated, finding his courage in his wife's anger. Family is supposed to help family in need. This isn't help, I thundered, my voice finally filling the large entryway. This is a hostile, premeditated act of disrespect. You did this behind my back. You ambushed my children. You conspired to make them feel worthless in the one place they should feel cherished. This has nothing to do with help. Robert, my feckless brother, finally decided to intervene. Come on, Mike. Let's all just calm down. Don't blow this all out of proportion. They're just bedrooms. I spun on him so fast he physically recoiled. Don't you dare, Robert. Don't you dare stand there, in the house you live in for free, eating the food I pay for, and tell me not to blow this out of proportion. You have stood by and watched them do this, day after day. You have benefited from it. Your son is treated like a king, while my sons are treated like peasants. Your silence is complicity. You are as guilty as they are. He stared at me, speechless, his face pale. The boys, seeing the absolute conviction in my eyes, didn't hesitate. They scrambled upstairs to pack. I walked to the front door, yanking it open. I'll be in the car. You have 5 minutes. Stepping out into the cool evening air felt like surfacing for breath. My next-door neighbor, Karen, a lovely retired nurse who always remembered the boys' birthdays, was watering her petunias. She saw the storm on my face and the turmoil in the house behind me. Michael? Is everything all right, dear? She asked, her voice low and full of genuine concern. I forced a tight, grim smile. Just a family matter, Karen. Taking the boys out for a bit to get some space. She put down her watering can and stepped closer. Honey, I don't want to be a busybody, but I have to tell you. I was in my garden yesterday afternoon. Your mother was on the phone with her sister, talking very loudly. She was bragging. That's the only word for it. She said she was finally taking control of the household and making things right for Robert and poor Nathan. The world tilted slightly. It wasn't just an impulse. It was a campaign. Thank you, Karen, I said, my voice thick. That is very good to know. My phone vibrated. A text from my friend, Thomas. He must have been in a group chat with Jessica. Jess just texted me. Situation X. What the hell is going on? My place is empty, you know the code. Go. The unwavering loyalty of my chosen family was a stark, painful contrast to the betrayal of my blood relatives. Just then, Jason and Daniel came out the door, each clutching a backpack. Their faces were no longer scared, but set with a new determination. They were on their dad's team. I ushered them to the car. As I was getting into the driver's seat, my mother burst out of the house, her face a mask of fury. Michael Morgan, if you drive away from this family, you will live to regret it, she shrieked, her voice echoing in the quiet suburban street. I paused, my hand on the car door, and looked at her over the roof of my car. The emotional son was gone. The lawyer was in complete control. You seem to be operating under a severe misapprehension, I said, my voice calm and carrying with lethal clarity. I am not driving away from my family. My family is right here inside this car. I am driving away from you. You have made a catastrophic miscalculation, and I would strongly advise you to retain legal counsel. Because from this moment forward, my lawyer will be my only form of communication with you. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb without a backward glance. In the rearview mirror, I saw the three of them, my mother, my father, my brother, standing on the lawn like statues, their faces a collage of shock, rage, and the first dawning glimmer of fear. They had poked the bear. They were about to discover it was, in fact, a dragon. The drive to Thomas's downtown apartment was shrouded in a heavy silence. The boys were plugged into their phones, retreating into the digital world to process the real-world chaos. I let them, Right now, they needed a buffer. I, on the other hand, was methodically building my war machine in my head. The emotional explosion was over. The phase of cold, calculated legal demolition was about to begin. Thomas's apartment was an oasis of calm. It was a sleek, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows, polished concrete floors, and a blessed, profound quiet. The boys, emotionally and physically drained, claimed the guest room and were asleep within 20 minutes, their faces illuminated by the fading glow of their screens. I stood in the living room, watching the city lights glitter like a scattered handful of diamonds. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was truly alone. The white-hot rage had cooled into a solid block of ice in my gut. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about justice. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Jessica Thorne. Her voice was crisp, professional, even at nearly 10 o'clock at night. Jess, it's me. It happened. I figured as much when Linda called, she said, her tone all business. Status report. Where are you? Thomas's apartment. He's away at a conference. The boys are with me. They're safe. Good. That's priority one. So what's the play? Tomorrow morning. Your office. I want to go over the full assault plan. I want it airtight. No loopholes, no exit strategies for them. I want this to be a checkmate. My 9 a.m. client just mysteriously rescheduled, she said, a hint of grim satisfaction in her voice. Be there at 8:30. And Michael, she paused. Deep breath. You got this. The simple confidence in her voice was like a steel rod pressed against my spine. Thanks, Jess. I'll see you in the morning. I barely slept. I sat by the window, nursing a coffee, and watched the sky slowly lighten from inky black to bruised purple to a hopeful orange. I thought about Sarah. I could almost hear her voice, practical and fierce. Don't you dare let them walk all over you, Michael. You are stronger than they think. I felt a surge of resolve. This wasn't just a fight for a house anymore. It was a fight for my own self-respect. It was a fight for the memory of the woman who believed in me. After dropping the boys at school with a reassuring hug and a promise that I was handling things, I walked into Jessica's office building. Dressed in my courtroom suit, I felt less like a grieving son and more like the lawyer I was trained to be. Jessica had a thick file on her desk with my name on it. She looked like a general about to brief her top field commander. Okay, she said, sliding the file toward me. Standard defenses are in place. Deed is in your name only. Inheritance from your grandmother was specified for you alone. That nullifies any claim they might have of contributing to the initial purchase. But that's just the defensive line. Let's talk offense. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with tactical light. After you activated Situation X, I made a call to a man named Frank. He's the best private investigator I've ever worked with. A real bloodhound for financial records. I had him do a deep dive on your parents. I sat up straighter. And what did the bloodhound find? Jessica's lips curved into a thin, sharp smile. He found that your parents' story of being on the verge of financial ruin is a work of fiction. A masterpiece of manipulation. They have a joint savings account at a small, out-of-the-way credit union. The balance is just over $50,000. Furthermore, they receive a monthly annuity payment from a trust your great-uncle left my father. It's not a king's ransom, but it's a steady, comfortable income. They haven't been struggling. They've been hoarding. I just stared at her, the audacity of it sucking the air from my lungs. The tearful phone calls, the pleas of poverty. All of it, a calculated lie. They weren't just taking advantage of my kindness. They had orchestrated the entire scenario from the very beginning. They've been playing me for 2 years, I said, the words tasting like poison. It's motive, Michael, she said, her voice sharp. It proves this was never about need. It was about greed. It shatters any sympathy a judge, or the court of family opinion, might have for them. But that's not all Frank found. She slid a tablet across the desk. It showed a call log, obtained legally through a subpoena of phone records tied to a preliminary inquiry she had filed. Your mother has been on the phone with a real estate lawyer, a man known for creative elder law strategies. They've spoken 3 times in the last month. The pieces of the puzzle weren't just clicking into place. They were forming a monstrous, ugly picture. This wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment power grab. This was a long-term, legally researched campaign. Our plans solidified. It was brutal in its simplicity. We would send a formal letter from Jessica's office, delivered by a process server during a time they were sure to be home, demanding a formal mediation to discuss the terms of their ongoing residency and financial contributions. They'll see it as an invitation to negotiate, I reasoned. They'll think their legal threats worked, that I'm scared. They'll come in ready to list their demands. Precisely, Jessica said, her smile turning predatory. They'll be walking into a wood chipper. The days leading up to the mediation were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I lived at Thomas's place, creating a clear physical boundary. My mother sent a barrage of texts, a chaotic mix of fury, guilt-tripping, and saccharine appeals to family. I responded to only one, with a single, cold sentence. All future communications are to be directed to my legal counsel, Jessica Thorne. Any attempt to contact me or my children directly will be noted. The night before the mediation, Jessica forwarded me one last email from Frank the PI. The subject line was simple, "Pay dirt." It was an audio file. I put in my earbuds, my heart pounding. It was a recording of the phone call between my mother and her lawyer. Frank, through means I didn't ask about, had gotten it. My mother's voice was slick, conspiratorial. "So the goal," she was saying, "is to establish a case for financial dependency. We can argue that our contributions to the household, our childcare, have a monetary value. The key is to make it seem like a potential custody dispute over the children's living situation would be emotionally and financially devastating for him. The threat of that alone might be enough to make him agree to a life estate, or at the very least, a significant cash buyout to make us go away quietly. He's a good father. He'll want to protect his kids from that kind of ugliness." I ripped the earbuds out, my hands shaking with a rage so pure it felt like a physical illness. She was going to use my love for my children as a weapon against me. She was going to threaten to put them through a traumatic custody battle, all for money. Any last, lingering speck of familial sentimentality I had, any trace of guilt, was incinerated in that moment. This wasn't a family squabble over bedrooms or respect. This was pure evil. And tomorrow I was going to drag it into the light and destroy it. The conference room at Jessica's firm was on the top floor, a sterile glass box in the sky. It was designed to make people feel small, and as I sat there waiting, I hoped it was working. The sky outside was a sheet of slate gray, threatening a rain that hadn't yet fallen. I wore my darkest suit, the one I called my funeral suit. It seemed appropriate. I had met Jessica in the lobby, and we'd ridden the elevator up in silence. There was nothing left to say. The strategy was set, the evidence was loaded. All that was left was the execution. We were there first. I chose the seat at the head of the long, polished mahogany table, a deliberate power move. Jessica sat to my right, arranging 3 thick, tabbed binders in front of her. We looked like a corporate acquisition team, not 2 people about to confront their family. They arrived precisely on time, a united front of delusion. My parents, Harold and Eleanor, were flanked by their lawyer, a man named Mr. Davies with slicked-back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. My brother, Robert, trailed behind them, looking nervous and out of his depth. My mother was dressed to play the part of the frail, wronged matriarch, wearing a soft lavender sweater and a string of pearls. She clutched a handkerchief in one hand. They took their seats on the opposite side of the table, a tangible chasm between us. Mr. Davies placed his own thin briefcase on the table and opened the proceedings. "Thank you for agreeing to this mediation, Michael," he began, his voice oozing a condescending sympathy. "My clients, your parents, are deeply saddened by this rift. They are hopeful that we can resolve this unfortunate family matter with maturity and compassion. They are, as always, primarily concerned with the well-being of their beloved grandchildren and feel that a stable, multi-generational household is in everyone's best interest." I didn't react. I just held his gaze, my face a blank mask. He cleared his throat, slightly unnerved by my silence. Given their significant non-monetary contributions to the household over the past 2 years, and of course their advanced age, my clients feel they have established certain inalienable residency rights. They are prepared to discuss a formal, written agreement that would codify these rights and ensure their continued presence in the home, for the sake of family harmony and the children's stability. Jessica let his words hang in the air, a monument to his own arrogance. Then she spoke, her voice calm, clear, and cutting. "Mr. Davies," she began, "I believe your clients have put you in an unfortunate position by operating from a false premise. We are not here today to negotiate the terms of their residency. We are here to dictate the terms of their departure." The shift in the room was palpable. The air crackled. Mr. Davies's oily smile evaporated. I beg your pardon." Jessica pushed the first binder across the table. "Binder 1, she said crisply. "You will find a certified copy of the deed to the property located at 125 Oak Street. As you can see, Michael Morgan is the sole legal owner. You will also find a copy of the last will and testament of his maternal grandmother, which clearly states that the inheritance used for the down payment was bequeathed exclusively to him. There is no shared ownership. There is no ambiguity. This is a matter of tenancy rights, not ownership," Davies stammered, scrambling. Jessica ignored him, turning her gaze to my brother. "Robert," she said, her tone deceptively gentle, "you were laid off from your sales position 6 months ago. Is that correct? That was the catalyst for you and your son moving in with Michael." Robert nodded dumbly. "Yes, that's right. And you have been actively seeking employment since then with no success?" Yes. It's a tough market," he mumbled, avoiding my eyes. "A very tough market," Jessica agreed, a dangerous glint in her eye. She pushed the second binder across the table. "Perhaps you could explain this, then." Binder 2. "This is a signed and accepted offer of employment from a rival firm, dated 3 months ago. The position is regional sales manager. The starting salary is $120,000 a year, plus a generous commission structure. It was, in fact, a significant promotion. You have been receiving a bi-weekly paycheck for the last 12 weeks. Is that not correct, Robert?" The color drained from my brother's face. He looked like he'd been punched. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "You've had a job?" Harold whispered, turning a stunned face to his favored son. "You've been lying to us?" Eleanor leapt to his defense. "He was being prudent. We advised him to save for a down payment, to not be rash. It was a financial strategy." Jessica's focus shifted to my parents. "Speaking of financial strategies," she said smoothly, "you came to your son 2 years ago, claiming dire financial straits, correct? The threat of foreclosure." "We were desperate," Eleanor cried, bringing the handkerchief to her eyes. "The performance was flawless." "Were you?" Jessica asked. She pushed the third and final binder across the table. It landed with a heavy, definitive thud. Binder 3. In it, you will find statements from a joint savings account under both of your names at the County Credit Union. The current balance is $53,421. You will also find records of monthly deposits from an annuity trust fund. You have had a comfortable, stable income for the entire duration of your stay at my client's home. Your claims of poverty were, to use a legal term, fraudulent. Mr. Davies looked like he was going to be sick. His entire case, built on a foundation of lies and manipulation, had just been demolished, brick by brick. My father stared at the bank statement, his face a ruin of shock and shame. He finally understood he hadn't been a partner in a family decision. He'd been an accomplice in a long con. "How could you?" my mother shrieked, her performance escalating to hysteria. "How could you spy on your own parents? After all we've done for you, we have rights." I finally spoke. My voice was quiet, but it seemed to suck all the air out of the room. "What rights are those, Mom?" I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table. "The right to lie to me for 2 years? The right to manipulate me? The right to turn my children into second-class citizens in the one place they should feel safe. My voice dropped even lower. Or were you thinking of other rights? The kind you discuss with your other lawyer? Jessica took out her phone, placed it in the center of the table, and hit a single button. My mother's voice, slick, cold, and conspiratorial, filled the silent, horrified room. The key is to make it seem like a potential custody dispute over the children's living situation would be emotionally and financially devastating for him. The threat of that alone might be enough to make him agree to a life estate, or at the very least, a significant cash buyout. Jessica stopped the recording. Checkmate. The silence that followed was a living thing. It was thick with horror, shame, and the ugly sound of truth. Mr. Davies slowly, deliberately, closed his briefcase. He was done. My father had his face buried in his hands. Robert was staring at our mother as if she were a monster he had just seen remove its human mask. And Eleanor, the great manipulator, was finally silent. Her face was slack with shock. The fake tears dried up, her web of lies in ashes around her. Jessica delivered the final blow. Here are our terms. You have 14 days to vacate the premises. You will not contact my client or his minor children. In return, he will not pursue criminal charges for fraud or file a complaint against you with Adult Protective Services for financial exploitation. This is a one-time offer. You have 5 minutes to accept. I looked at the wreckage of the people across the table. There was no joy in this victory, only a vast, empty sadness and the first, clean breath of freedom I'd taken in 2 years. Leaving the law office felt like walking out of a tomb and into the light. The threatened rain had never come. Instead, a weak, watery sun was trying to break through the clouds. A fittingly ambivalent sky for an ambivalent victory. Jessica and I shook hands in the lobby. A simple, profound gesture of gratitude between allies who had navigated a war together. "Call me if you need anything," she said. "Anything at all." I knew she meant it. I drove not to Thomas's place, but to a small park overlooking the river. I just sat on a bench and watched the water flow, trying to let the toxic adrenaline seep out of my system. The confrontation was over. The lies were exposed. But the fallout was just beginning. That evening, I took the boys home. For good. Unlocking the front door to our house felt like a momentous occasion. The air inside already felt different, lighter, as if the very molecules had been cleansed of resentment. I sat Jason and Daniel down on the living room sofa. I didn't tell them about the bank accounts or the audio recording. That level of betrayal was a burden for an adult, not for children. But I told them the truth in a way they could understand. "Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Robert are going to be moving out soon," I said calmly. "We had a long talk with some lawyers today, and we all agreed that it's for the best. This is our house again. Just the three of us." Jason's eyes widened slightly. "For real? They're really leaving?" "For real," I confirmed. Daniel, my quiet one, simply asked, "So I can have my room back?" "You can have your room back," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It's all yours." The relief that washed over their faces was my true victory. The next 14 days were a masterclass in tension. It was like living in a house with hostile ghosts. My parents were packing, but with the resentful lethargy of the deeply wronged. My mother, Eleanor, would glide through rooms like a tragic heroine, sighing heavily whenever I was near. She enacted a policy of culinary warfare, cooking elaborate, delicious-smelling meals exclusively for herself, Harold, and Nathan, leaving my sons and me to fend for ourselves with takeout and sandwiches. It was a petty, final assertion of her control over the domestic sphere. Harold was a different story. The shame had hollowed him out. He was a wraith, shuffling from room to room with packing tape and boxes, his eyes downcast. He had been my mother's willing second-in-command, but the revelation of her cold, calculated plot, especially the part about using the children, had clearly shattered him. He was a man confronting his own moral bankruptcy, and it was a heavy weight to bear. The most significant change was in Robert. 2 days after the mediation, he knocked on the door of the guest room, where I was still sleeping to maintain distance. "Mike, you got a minute?" His voice was hesitant, stripped of its usual bravado. I opened the door. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "What's on your mind, Rob?" He couldn't meet my eyes. He stared at a spot on the carpet. "I'm packed. Me and Nathan. We're leaving tomorrow morning. I got a short-term furnished rental across town." I simply nodded. "Okay. Look, He struggled, his throat working. "I know sorry isn't enough. I know it doesn't even begin to cover it. I was a coward, Mike. I knew what they were doing was wrong. I saw how they treated your kids, how they disrespected you in your own house. And I just let it happen. I soaked it up." "Why, Rob?" I asked, my voice genuinely curious, not accusatory. "The job, the salary. You didn't need this. Why lie?" He finally looked at me, and his eyes were raw with a self-loathing that was painful to witness. "Because my whole life, she drilled it into my head, that you got lucky. You got the inheritance for the house. You got the brains for law school. You got the perfect wife, the perfect family. And I was the one who struggled. She told me I deserved a leg up, that the world owed me. And for a while, it felt good to be the one who was being catered to, the one whose needs came first. It was pathetic, but it was true." He took a ragged breath. "But I swear to you, Mike, I never knew about the rest. The secret money, the plan to sue you. When I heard that recording in the lawyer's office, hearing her talk about using Jason and Daniel, about a custody battle." He shook his head, a look of pure disgust twisting his features. "That wasn't about helping me. That was about her. It was all about her. I was just the excuse she used. I was her pawn to get what she wanted. It was the most honest he had ever been with me. I wasn't looking at the golden child anymore. I was looking at a man waking up from a lifelong spell." "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly. "I haven't even forgiven myself. But I had to tell you. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure Nathan knows that his cousins are great kids and his uncle is a good man. I'm not letting her poison touch him." He turned to go. "Rob," I said, stopping him. He paused, his hand on the doorknob. "It's a start," I said. A flicker of something, gratitude, relief, crossed his face. He nodded once and then was gone. The day of my parents' final departure was gray and quiet. Most of their things were already gone, moved by Robert. Eleanor stood directing the placement of the last few boxes into a taxi like a deposed monarch watching her treasures being looted. Her final words were for me. "I hope this makes you happy, Michael," she spat, her voice laced with venom. "You chose a house over your own family. You have destroyed us." Before I could form a reply, my father, silent until this moment, stepped between us. His voice was weary, broken, but firm. "Stop it, Eleanor. Just stop." He turned to me, and his eyes, for the first time, held a glimmer of clarity. "He didn't do this for the house. He did it because of us. Because of what we did. He's a good father, Eleanor. And we were not good parents." He picked up the last suitcase, turned his back on her stunned silence, and walked out the door. My mother stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief at this ultimate betrayal. Then, without another word, she swept out of the house. I closed the door. The definitive click of the deadbolt echoed in the sudden, vast silence. I rested my forehead against the cool wood, closed my eyes, and took my first truly free breath in 2 years. The silence that descended upon the house in the days that followed was a physical entity. It was deep, profound, and utterly healing. It wasn't the empty silence of loss I'd known after Sarah died. It was the clean, peaceful silence of reclaiming a violated space. But I knew that exorcising the ghosts was only the first step. The emotional residue they'd left behind was toxic, and I needed to make sure my boys and I cleansed ourselves of it completely. Our first act of reclamation was a declaration of war on beige. I didn't just move the boys' furniture back into their rooms. I drove them to the home improvement store with a mission. "Pick any color paint you want," I announced, gesturing to the overwhelming wall of color swatches. "I don't care if it's neon orange or pitch black. These are your spaces, your command centers. Let's make them feel that way." The project consumed our weekend. Jason, my budding teenager, surprised me by choosing a deep, sophisticated navy blue, which we accented with crisp white trim. Daniel, my artist, went for a vibrant forest green that made his room feel like a secret treehouse. We laid down drop cloths, cranked up a playlist of their favorite songs, and got to work. We dripped paint on the floor, on ourselves, on each other. We ordered pizza and ate it sitting on the floor, laughing. We weren't just painting walls, we were performing a ritual. We were layering over the bad memories with new, happy ones. Seeing Jason meticulously taping the edges of his ceiling and Daniel grinning with a streak of green paint across his forehead, I felt a sense of rightness settle deep in my bones. The following week, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Thompson for the three of us. I was prepared for some resistance, especially from Jason, but they agreed without complaint. They knew, I think, that we needed it. It's important that we talk about this, I explained on the drive over. Not just what happened, but how it made us feel. And there are no wrong answers. It's okay to be angry, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be confused. In the safety of Dr. Thompson's calm, book-lined office, they finally opened up. Jason, who always tried to be so strong, admitted that the anger was secondary to a deeper feeling: humiliation. It was like they were publicly announcing that we didn't matter as much as Nathan, he said, staring at his sneakers. And we couldn't do anything about it. It made me feel weak. Daniel, in his quiet way, articulated the loss. I just miss the way they used to be, he whispered. Before they moved in, Grandma used to read me comics, and Grandpa would show me how to fix my bike. Then they came to live with us, and they just got weird. Like they forgot who we were. It was a gut punch to hear, but it was a necessary pain. Dr. Thompson gave their feelings a name. He called it a familial betrayal and a violation of trust. He helped me explain to them that what I had done wasn't about punishing Grandma and Grandpa, but about protecting our family unit, the three of us. It was about enforcing a critical boundary. He gave the boys tools to articulate their feelings and assured them that their home was, and always would be, their safe harbor. We left that session feeling lighter, more united than ever before. My relationship with Robert began to mend, but it was a careful, deliberate process. There were no grand gestures, just small, consistent steps. It started with a text from him a few weeks later. Hey, taking Nate to the park to throw a football. Wondered if the boys wanted to come. I let Jason and Daniel decide. They wanted to go. The first meeting was tentative. Robert and I stuck to safe topics, sports, the weather, while the boys, after a few minutes of awkward shuffling, fell into the easy camaraderie of cousins. Watching them tackle each other and run laughing across the field, I knew that salvaging this relationship for their sake was the right thing to do. The park visits became a regular occurrence. Then we graduated to grabbing a pizza. Robert was a different person. He was more thoughtful, a better listener. He asked about my work, genuinely interested in my caseload and my chances for a promotion. He talked openly about his own job, his salary, and the budget he'd created. He'd opened a college fund for Nathan. He was taking pride in his independence. One afternoon, as we were watching the kids play, he said, "You know, in a really messed up way, this whole thing might have been the best thing that ever happened to me." I raised an eyebrow. "I spent my whole life being propped up by her," he said, not needing to say my mother's name. "It made me lazy. It made me entitled. When you stood up to her, when you brought the whole house of cards down, you forced me to actually grow up, to be a dad. It was the most humiliating experience of my life, and I'm grateful for it." I clapped him on the shoulder. "I'm glad you're doing well, Rob." "I'm trying," he said, and for the first time I believed him. My own life began to open up in ways I hadn't expected. At Jessica's urging, I joined a support group. "You've been holding this family together on your own for 5 years, Michael," she'd said. "Go talk to people who get it." It was a group for widowed parents. For the first time, I was in a room full of people who understood the bizarre tightrope walk of solo parenting while simultaneously navigating your own grief. They understood the exhaustion, the loneliness, the guilt. It was there I met Rachel. She was a landscape architect with a quick, easy laugh, and kind eyes that held a hint of the same sadness I saw in my own mirror. Her husband had died in a car accident 3 years prior, leaving her with 2 daughters. Our first conversation wasn't flirtatious. It was a conversation of profound relief. We talked about the nightmare of school bake sales, the challenge of teaching a teenager to drive, the way a certain song on the radio could still reduce you to tears. We started meeting for coffee. Then we started taking our 4 kids to the park on Sundays. It evolved organically, a friendship built on a foundation of shared experience. There was no pressure, no pretense. One afternoon, as we watched our kids, a chaotic, laughing mob, trying to fly a kite, she turned to me and smiled. "You seem happy, Michael," she said. I considered the statement. The constant, low-grade tension that had lived in my shoulders for 2 years was gone. The cloud of resentment had lifted. My home was a haven of peace. My sons were happy and secure. My relationship with my brother was slowly healing. I had a new friend who understood my past without me needing to explain it. I said, and the simple truth of it felt like a revelation. I really am happy. I was starting a new chapter. It wasn't the one I had written with Sarah, but it was a good one. One filled with hope, resilience, and the quiet, hard-won joy of a peaceful life. Last night was one of those perfect, crisp autumn evenings. The kind that makes you want to build a bonfire. The leaves on the massive maple tree in our backyard were a riot of red and gold, and the air smelled of wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney. I was on the back deck, grilling burgers, a simple domestic act that felt like a luxury. From inside the house, I could hear the sound of Jason's electric guitar. He'd been practicing a new song, and he was finally nailing the solo. The hesitant, clumsy notes of a few months ago had transformed into a confident, soaring melody. At the kitchen table, visible through the sliding glass door, Daniel was hunched over his sketchbook, his pencil flying across the page. His art, once a quiet hobby, had become his voice, his drawings filled with intricate worlds and fantastic creatures. The house was thrumming with the sounds of my children's contentment. It was the most beautiful symphony I had ever heard. We ate dinner outside, under the string of Edison bulbs I'd hung over the summer. It was just a normal Tuesday, but it felt like a celebration. There was no undercurrent of tension, no carefully chosen words. We just talked. About school, about a funny video they'd seen, about whether a hot dog is technically a sandwich. It was easy. It was normal. As I was gathering the plates, Daniel grew quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Dad." "Yeah, bud. You know, that was a really, really bad time," he said, his voice soft but clear. "When Grandma and Grandpa were here, when they did that, with our rooms and everything." I stopped what I was doing and sat back down, giving him my full attention. "Yeah, it was a terrible time. I was really scared back then," he admitted, looking at me to see my reaction. Jason, who had been quiet, chimed in from across the table. "I wasn't scared," he said, with his typical teenage bravado. "I was just really mad." "But," he paused, "you fixed it, Dad." Daniel nodded emphatically, a small smile appearing on his face. "Yeah, you totally fixed it. I'm proud of you, Dad." A lump formed in my throat, thick and sudden. In my career, I'd received praise from senior partners, gratitude from clients, respect from opposing counsel. But none of it, not a single word, had ever carried the weight or the meaning of that simple declaration from my 12-year-old son. "I'm proud of you guys too," I managed to say, my voice a little husky. "You were both so strong and so brave through all of it." Later that night, long after the boys were asleep, I stood in the quiet living room, the dishwasher humming softly in the kitchen. My gaze landed on the framed photo of Sarah on the mantelpiece. It was from our wedding. Her smile was so full of life, her eyes sparkling with all the hopes and dreams for a future that was cut short. For so long after she was gone, I would look at that photo and feel a sharp pang of inadequacy, a quiet terror that I was failing her, failing our promise. I was just treading water, trying to keep our heads from going under. But tonight, looking at her radiant face, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. I had kept my promise. I had protected our boys. I had defended our home, the sanctuary we had built not just with a mortgage and fresh paint, but with shared laughter and whispered dreams. In the face of betrayal, I had taught our sons that family is not an unbreakable bond of blood, but a fragile, precious thing that must be built on a foundation of love, respect, and fiercely protected boundaries. I had taught them that their home is their castle, and that no one has the right to make them feel powerless within its walls. The journey was brutal. I had to confront the ugliest parts of my own history to find the light. But we had found it. And in doing so, I hadn't just saved my house. I had saved my family. I had saved myself. And I finally understood, in the deepest part of my soul, what it truly meant to be a father. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a hard choice to protect your own peace or your family? Please, share your story in the comments below. I'd really like to read them. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.